Hello, person watching this. I don't know necessarily who you are, but I might know you. I am Santier, and today I want to talk a little bit about memory. Specifically, the notion that memory, or rather, that time moves faster the older you get. And this is something that I've definitely heard, and I've certainly experienced it at times myself, but I've kind of reflected on it, and I think, I've heard different theories as to why this is. So we'll get to the memory thing in a moment, but one of the theories is that the percentage of each moment of time is a lesser percentage of your life. But I don't think that is necessarily the reason why. This is speculation. I don't know. I haven't looked into any research on this subject, but just my own understanding of how memory works is connected to this. So my experience is that an individual second moves at the same speed it always has. I'm passing through time at the same sort of rate. So the question then is, why does, for example, 1 week feel shorter or another feel longer or any given thing like that? Why did, for example, 2018 feel really long to a number of people? I've certainly heard that sentiment expressed that 2018 was an extremely long year. And I think that it has to do with memory, because the sense of the passage of time has to do with how much we remember of what happened in our lives. So, for example, if I don't really specifically remember eating, 3 weeks ago, then that's a hole in my memory. That's a period of time that's kind of unfilled, so it kind of just gets compressed, for lack of a better phrase. It kind of becomes less important, or it doesn't really register. So one of the things that happens as you get older is you have more experiences. One of the things that I think occurs is because new memories or new experiences are very powerful types of memories, they tend to stand out better. The other thing that I think happens is we have narrative memories, generally speaking. We can remember lots of different facts and stuff, but when it comes to what's happened in our lives, it's very much so narratively driven. At least this is my experience with my life. And I can get into that more in a moment. But what I think ends up happening is when we experience new narratives, they stand out a lot more. But when we have the same sort of narrative repeated, the narratives tend to blend together. So, as an example of this, if you're, say, going to work, your experience of driving to work might be extremely similar to all of your other experiences of driving to work. It is the singular experience of driving to work. Therefore, it does not differentiate itself, any particular day does not differentiate itself from any other day in this regard. And so they all kind of blend into one mono memory. Because the narrative, the story, the experience is all the same. There's nothing to distinguish it or what am I looking for? Basically, there's nothing to make it different unless something special happens, in which case you might remember it more. Like if you had a car accident, then it probably would stand out very strongly in your memory. So I think one of the things that happens is when we're younger, we have many more new experiences, new narratives that we're building. And so memory tends to be a little bit more separated because we don't have as many repeat experiences. We have more new experiences. We don't have as many experiences to repeat. The other thing is that when we're younger, we tend to have school that we're going to. This is because it changes year to year what's happening. Our life situation has these regular markers. It tends to make it feel a lot fuller because we keep getting new experiences in this sort of way in terms of the routine of our lives and the way that things work. As opposed to adult life, where you tend to have set patterns and set routines that kind of get established and don't change as much day by day and year by year. I definitely know that during school, there was the regular marker of school years and new school years being added. And this sort of regular change causes a regular change-up of sort of the narrative of our lives. And at least for me, I think it can make it more distinct and not as pulled together. But there's something else that I've experienced that I was kind of alluding to earlier, which is that I have different narrative threads. So, for example, when I'm in my grandparents' house, it's a place that I've visited numerous times, less frequently as the years have gone on, but that is a singular narrative thread for me. When I go back there, that thread resumes, and when I leave, it gets set down. And the same sort of thing happens with me at home, or in any other particular location. I don't know, this is just kind of a side anecdote, but just kind of curious how other people's memory narratives work. So definitely each individual thread is its own distinct entity for me, which makes certain types of trips and stuff interesting in that they kind of get their own miniature threads, and the other ones are kind of suspended. That's not my life for a while, and this other thread is, and then it gets set down and my life resumes somewhere else. I don't know, just an interesting sort of quirk. But anyway, that's kind of what I was thinking about, is just the way that narrative memory works and the way that that kind of can blend and flow together, or create a more contiguous or continuous experience, whereas it's a lot more discrete when you're younger and a lot more broken up, and just different things that make it a more a different sort of way that it works with a narrative memory, that makes it stand out more and be more easily remembered, and therefore more of the time can be remembered, and therefore time seems to move relatively slower. New experiences, and we're remembering more of it, so it doesn't compress as much. On the plus side, as you get older, that fact, with just how life works, does mean that you tend to be able to be more patient. At least that's been my experience. Anyway, that's kind of what I wanted to talk about. Hopefully I covered my main point well enough. If there's any questions or desire for follow-up, go ahead and leave them in the comments below. I'm going to go ahead and wrap up here, so until next time, everyone, take care. Bye-bye.